Thank you, Deputy Provost. I would first like to thank Councillor Damien Doran-Timpson for providing an opportunity to submit an amendment to his motion and providing a further platform to explore and debate the undoubted benefits of Scottish independence. Councillor Timpson asserts the Scottish Government has mismanaged the economy. However, he simply but crucially ignores the complete and utter failings of his party's government. He wants the same UK government that has imposed 14 years of unrelenting austerity, that has failed councils in England, to somehow do better by councils up here in the far and remote north. What planet does Councillor Timpson live on? It is expected that 1 in 5 English councils will declare bankruptcy this year, and just in case folk need reminding, the Scottish Government are funded in a similar way to those councils, although since 2010 our Barnett consequentials have reduced in real terms by a colossal 17%, whereas the money allocated to councils in England has reduced by 10%. However, the Scottish Government's prudent and caring approach has meant that those in most need continue to benefit from policies designed to protect and enhance lives. But what do we hear from the Labour and Tory seats? Oh, the Scottish Government are too busy funding vanity projects to adequately fund our councils. Vanity projects such as ensuring our NHS is protected, unlike in England where cuts are deep, in a deliberate attempt to introduce a private funding model. And sadly, Keir Starmer has confirmed he will continue on this same destructive trajectory. Every pound not spent in England is reflected in our Barnett consequentials. What other terrible vanity projects has the Scottish Government squandered our money on? Let me think. Free university tuition, bus passes, prescriptions, or a Scottish social security service that puts people first and ensures dignity is preserved? Or perhaps the child payment which has taken 90,000 children in Scotland out of poverty? What have the Tories done to help their poorest and most vulnerable children in England? I can tell you, nothing. Sweet Fanny Adams. Instead, there are now more children than ever languishing in poverty with significantly less opportunities than their parents and grandparents. The Westminster Government cannot feed their own wains, never mind ours. Let's not kid ourselves, both the Tories and Labour are running scared. They know that the people of Scotland, including the vast majority of our young people, are switched on to independence. They know that relying on your neighbour for pocket money to make decisions on your behalf is not sensible or productive. They know that when your neighbour interferes in decisions made in your parliament, something is wrong. They know the promises of EU membership security was a lie, an expensive and debilitating lie. That is not an equal partnership, that is an abusive partnership and one that cannot be tolerated. Councillor Timpson claims he wants our councils better funded. Well, if he is genuine, he will acknowledge that a country with the natural resources afforded to Scotland should not be spending ridiculous amounts of money mitigating for the horrendous mismanagement of the economy by successive Westminster governments of all colours. He should be asking himself, why are we not like Norway, a country who discovered oil at the same time as Scotland and got rich, but here in Scotland we got poorer? An independent Scotland will finally benefit from its vast and credible natural resources. It will have the opportunity to continue to be a world leader in climate change using its incredible renewable energy potential. It will have the opportunity to rebuild relationships with our EU neighbours and explore and develop economic and cultural relationships with our Northern European friends. It will have the opportunity to decide on its own foreign affairs and what battles it wants to support. But instead of looking outward to the great possibilities our incredible nation has at its feet, Damien Timpson wants to tear up the devolution settlement. He wants to stamp all over the will of the Scottish people, a Scottish people who elected their government, unlike the government in Westminster that they soundly rejected. Damien Timpson wants to go cap in hand to his masters when it is those same masters who have caused the problems in the first place. I implore every person in this room to look beyond the scathing right-wing unionist mainstream media and ask yourselves why they fight so hard to keep us if we are such an enormous burden. Why have they chosen to discredit and override legislation voted in our parliament? Why do they want to bring our parliament to its knees? And I can tell you it's because they're afraid. They're afraid to lose their cash cow. I implore elected members of this council to look beyond the straitjacket that is Westminster and this disunited
30 seconds, Councillor Clerk.
Thank you. To be brave and to start to look outward. To that end, I ask you to support this amendment requesting the Chief Executive writes to Rishi Sunak to demand he honours the will of the Scottish Parliament and immediately enters into discussion with the First Minister to start negotiations for a second independence referendum. It is only with independence that Scotland will shake off the shackles that have prevented us flourishing. Support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Stafford, I believe you were seconding this one. Would you like to speak now?
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Provost. I've heard some Kafkaesque things in this chamber, but this is about the worst of them. We've got a Tory motion here with the phrase in it, mismanagement of public finances, asking us to write to the very people who have destroyed the economy and our public services to save us from themselves is just bizarre. I wanted to start with a quote. It says, the best decisions are those taken most locally. And it was a quote that was made here in 2022, but it wasn't from any of the SNP group. It was from Councillor Dorn Timpson himself. And I think everyone would agree with him on that occasion. Yet here he is advocating for a fundamentally undemocratic position with this motion. If the people of West Lothian wanted the Tories to make the spending decisions for them, they would have given you more than 15% of the vote. Not to mention the Labour voters that probably didn't expect their party to offer the level of unrepresentative power that you have within this administration, but that's a different story. If the people of Scotland wanted the Tories to make their spending decisions for them, they wouldn't have rejected you at every election since 1955, not to mention your catastrophic polling at the moment throughout the UK and especially in Scotland. Whatever measurement you take, the Tory party is undeniably unpopular in Scotland and has dragged us over 14 years in a very damaged place, financially, democratically and morally at this point. I tried to find some good examples of where Michael Gove's direct intervention has been successful, and there's been a few crackers recently. Just last week, the Westminster Cross-Party Public Affairs Committee produced a damning report on the levelling up agenda for local government, which he sits over. The chair said, "We are concerned that there is a worrying lack of transparency in the department's approach to awarding funds." Wonder why that is. This approach has wasted scarce public resources and caused some local authorities to miss out. Another of Michael Gove's other great plans is to allow local authorities in England greater flexibility to sell off assets and plug holes in their revenue budgets. And the Chief Executive of the Chartered Institute for Public Finance and Accounting said, "The truth is, councils are being incentivised to dispose of assets to use those capital resources to fund their revenue budgets, which is appalling. They need to be properly funded by taxation." If you compare this, on the other hand, to Scotland, and the vast majority of measures, Scotland is outperforming the rest of the UK already, whether that be higher levels of inward investment, higher productivity levels, more people per head receiving a living wage, a smaller gender pay gap, and lower levels of poverty, especially child poverty.
Just 30 seconds, Councillor Stafford.
This is reflected in the trust that the Scottish people have continually put in consecutive SNP governments and the value they place on our devolved Parliament. So instead of going with a begging bowl to Michael Gove, I would say just shake off this corrupt Westminster system and become a normal, successful independent country which has functioning public services, properly funded and accountable politicians. I don't think that's too much to ask.